when God created the heavens and the earth, that we're talking here not just about the things that we can see. When heavens in Genesis 1 is not merely referring to the sky and outer space. But what we see in Isaiah 6, or at least what Isaiah saw and then describes to us, is a window, a vision that he had of the invisible heavens, where God created those invisible heavens. Those are not eternal. God created them. And so that's hard for people to understand sometimes, but prior to any creation, the triune God existed in himself, and there was nothing else, not even a void, because a void is a thing. God created ex nihilo, but he not only created out of nothing, he created into nothing. There was no other existent. And then he created that heaven, the invisible heavens, as his throne room, and he created the visible heavens and the visible earth as his footstool.
Yes, Isaiah 66:1. Heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. And maybe our listeners who aren't diehard Reformed Forum fans, or who haven't listened to all of the Voss groups or been reading Klein and Voss and Gaffin and Ritterboss a lot, maybe this would help. Heaven in biblical presentation is not an abstract, ethereal thing that lacks the concreteness of the things that we see. You could put it this way: when Paul in Colossians 1:16 says, "By him, by the eternal Son, all things were created, things visible and invisible, things in heaven and on earth." The things in heaven correspond to the invisible created things. The things on earth and the things that we can see in the visible heavens correspond to the things we can see. And if you can conceive of this, texts like Isaiah 6, Nehemiah 9, Psalm 11:4, and a host of others, think of the heavens, to use the language of Hebrews 9:24 and Hebrews 8:5. Think of the heavens that God created in the absolute beginning. Think of that as a concrete, archetypal, permanent temple dwelling of God.
Right.
That everything on earth is going to shadow and foreshadow. It's going to shadow it as a copy. It's going to foreshadow it because the things on earth are the impermanent copies of that permanent heavenly temple dwelling of God. And so the thing that I think that if we're not careful, we can think of the earth as the place where concrete entities exist, and heaven is some abstract, ethereal thing.
Yeah.
But the biblical view is just the reverse, that the concrete glory dwelling of God, the place where his glory abides forever and the angels worship him forever, given the absolute beginning of creation, that's the heavens.
It is.
In Nehemiah 9:6, the heaven of heavens, or maybe to use one last concrete illustration, when the author of Hebrews says, "You have come to Jesus," what does that mean? You've come to a heavenly Jerusalem. You've come to a heavenly Mount Zion. If you back it up to Hebrews 8:5, you've come to the heavenly reality that the earthly tabernacle was a copy and shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the place, the concrete place that the Lord pitched or created, and was not pitched or created by the hands of man, like the tabernacle or temple.
Yeah.
So I think we're plagued by thinking of heaven as a kind of blank, light blue void,
or
with
just
nothing concrete there.
Or that's just the location of God. That's
Yes.
is some spiritual location where God is. But that's something we can't get our minds around. But God was in no place. There was no place prior to creation. And God didn't dwell in a house by himself and then create. I mean, heaven is made. He made it for his own purposes.